Here with me exclusively is U.S. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Todd, it's good to see you as always. Can you confirm this report from the Washington Post that that is what this Tyler Robinson said online to his colleagues, as we'll call them?
We're going through a ton of evidence. It is extraordinarily dangerous when there's leaks like this, as we go through literally mountains and mountains of evidence. So I saw the report in the Washington Post. I can tell you that Director Patel, the local law enforcement, ATF, the marshals are working 24/7 on every angle. And I think it would be a disservice to them for me to, spill the guts on what we know but before we have a complete picture.
So that information got out somehow. And it would be odd, I think, if it got out from one of the characters he was discussing this with. So it leaked from somewhere. Are you guys concerned about other leaks here?
Yes, absolutely. Of course we're concerned about leaks. We've been concerned about leaks from the beginning because it affects the work that we're trying to do. Director Patel and the Deputy Director today, Bongino, talked about how this investigation is ongoing, and that shouldn't surprise you. It shouldn't surprise any American that we're going through. We want to make sure that anybody that was involved, if anybody else was involved, is brought to justice. And so this systematic leak that happened at the Washington Post, I'm not going to confirm or deny that, except to say that you better believe that every FBI agent, and like I said, not just FBI, the state and locals, ATF, and the marshals are doing everything that we can to make sure that we get all the evidence that we can.
Who's leading the investigation? Because you have state authorities, you have the FBI involved, the feds are obviously have a really important role here, but it's confusing to me in watching this who's actually in charge.
Look, Director Patel was on the ground almost from the hours after this assassination took place. We're working very closely with the local law enforcement. And so when you say a leading, which is a totally fair question, we're working this together, including the Department of Justice. So we're helping with search warrants, subpoenas, processing the evidence, the firearm, and looking for fingerprints, looking for DNA. But on the other hand, the feds are not the ones that have charged him. The state has. And so we're not interested in who's leading and who's going to get an award at the end for being in charge. We're interested in justice for Charlie. And so we're working together.
Had you met Charlie Kirk before?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yes, I saw him just a few weeks ago in the Oval Office with the president. I saw him at the White House constantly. He was so full of life and so encouraging to me and the work that we're doing at the Department of Justice, and offered advice and all smart advice. I saw him meet with the president. He offered smart advice to the president as well. He was an
it's personal for all of us. It's obviously the rule of law and justice must be done, but it's personal to a lot of Americans who feel like they knew him even if they didn't. When will we see federal charges?
Well, it depends on if there's a federal charge. So look, the federal charge, there's not that many murder charges that are federal.
Very few.
And very few. And so look, there's stalking, there's certain deprivation of rights charges that we possibly could bring, but that goes after going through all the evidence and trying to understand what this man's motivation was in doing what he did. And if there's a federal charge, we will bring it, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But if there's not a federal charge, we're going to do everything we can to support Utah and make sure that they need everything that they get everything they need from us.
CNN is criticizing the FBI's handling of all this. Watch.
FBI Director Kash Patel's unusual approach here in this Charlie Kirk case, fueling questions about his leadership.
The fear is that this does affect the prosecution of this case. If you are his attorney, you will raise these questions, and a judge could very well raise the question of whether this damages the fairness of any trial that could go for this suspect. They have not made any conclusions as to the motivations behind this, but Kash Patel and the President of the United States, of course, have already ascribed this to left-wing ideology.
So that's the point. I mean, they're saying, and the correspondent is saying, look, that's out there. That was the import of the federal presence in Utah. So that's already colored the case. And to that, you say?
I'd say it's ridiculous. I mean, nobody should be surprised that CNN is being critical of anything this administration does. But that being said, Director Patel, why did we catch this man? we caught this
put
man
the photo. He
because
demanded that photo be put
that's
out.
exactly right. And why was his photo plastered everywhere? Because of the work of the FBI and local law enforcement. Why was the video released? Because Director Patel was there getting it done. If he wasn't there, CNN would have the same report and said, shocker, Director Patel wasn't there.
But are you guys worried that he's not cooperating, it looks like, the suspect, that in trial he's going to say the whole case was prejudiced because the feds, came in, swooped down, and there was no way I was going to get a unbiased jury poll? I mean, I can just see that's the kind of claim he's going to make.
Sure. I mean, listen, that's something that we'll deal with when we get. Of course, there was an all-out manhunt to find this man, like there is in other cases similar to this. And yes, he will have a lawyer that can make a motion at the right time if he so chooses. But no, that's not something that I'm worried about even a little bit.
The use of interstate commerce or the internet to make threats, hint at threats, communicate online, perhaps from different states to Utah in a kind of a group chat, would that implicate federal charges?
Good. That's the stalking we talked about. So absolutely. So if we, as we go through the physical evidence and the forensic evidence that we've recovered from him and from his home, that's what we're looking at, is do we have enough to make a federal charge? But just to be clear, President Trump said it today, we are supporting the Utah system to bring justice to Charlie. And if we can bring federal charges, we will. But if we can't, we're not losing sleep over that. We're just going to do everything we can to make sure that the Utah prosecutors have everything that they need to continue the work that they're doing in this case.
But Cash also said that the suspect left a note and paraphrased it earlier today saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk. I'm going to do it. The note was apparently destroyed. What more can you tell us?
That's something that's part of the investigation, and that happens in investigations like this where there's evidence that maybe you learn about later that doesn't exist anymore.
To whom was that written? Do you know?
We're still looking into the circumstances of which that was written and destroyed, and there may be more to come on that. But look, we have a lot of evidence. And I don't say that to appear to you to be overconfident. I say that to you to hopefully let folks take a breath and let us go through that evidence. There's some leaks today about Discord. There's some leaks today about what the
something big is coming. We heard about those messages on Discord.
That's right. And there's also about what the family has done or not done, what his roommate has said or not said. And I know that I want people to know what that information is, and we're all kind of thirsty for that to help us get closure. But what I would say is that the more time that we can do our work behind the scenes, the better we're all going to be when this case, when we're finished investigating this
Todd,
case.
I think what a lot of people are fearful of is that there is an undisclosed network of people burrowed into the dark reaches of the internet who are plotting against Americans with whom they disagree politically, who are in the public eye, who are especially on college campuses or giving speeches and so forth, Congress people, senators, obviously FBI takes care of President Trump, we hope, but that this is aiding and abetting a network of violent political extremists, and in this case, left-wing extremists. What can you tell to Americans tonight who are concerned about that, given what we're hearing?
I think what I would say to you and to the American people is we share those concerns, we meaning the Department of Justice. And so we're doing everything we can to investigate not only this incident with Charlie and what we know about what happened here as it relates to anybody else that's involved, but also more generally. We're of course, always going to be worried about larger groups. The president talked about it today in the Oval Office about some of these funded organizations that are protected behind either NGOs or nonprofits, but they're really just acting. They're really just
how
criminal
high could this go?
organizations.
How high could this investigation go?
I mean, we will see, but they have money. So money doesn't grow on trees. So they're funded. They're well funded, and so that's what we're looking at. And I don't have anything to report to you tonight about anybody getting handcuffed, but I will say I'm motivated, the Department of Justice is motivated, Director Patel is motivated to get to the bottom of this.
While always balancing, of course, free speech rights and not surveilling Americans who have no threat of terrorism or probable cause to commit an act of domestic terrorism. Todd, thank you very much. It is a lot of fast-paced information coming out. Those leaks are tough. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.